Mexico is about to finish building one of its biggest and most ambitious infrastructure projects to date. This is the Tren Maya, an intercity railway project that aims to connect many of the tourist hotspots and archaeological sites within the Yucatán Peninsula, promising jobs and economic opportunities to Mexico's largely impoverished and neglected southern regions. But despite its potential benefits, there are genuine environmental and cultural concerns. Is the Tren Maya going to be exactly what Mexico needs? And will enough people actually use it? Hey, I'm your host Regis, and with the project almost fully complete, let's take a look at how it's all turning out. The Tren Maya is located here. It'll be a 1,500-kilometer rail network running in a loop around the Yucatán Peninsula, a region of Mexico that's home to some of the most luxurious coastal tourist destinations in the entire country. One such famous destination is the Riviera Maya, a stretch of coast between Cancun and Tulum known for its white sand beaches and high-end hotels and resorts. This region alone sees upwards of 33 million visitors every year. But this place hasn't always been like this. Thousands of years ago, even before the arrival of the Spanish, this area was once home to the Mayan civilization, the original and indigenous population of the Yucatán Peninsula, hence the name of the Megaproject in the first place. During their time, the Maya built countless different cities, temples, and pyramids, some of which are still standing this very day and have become popular tourist destinations in their own right. One example of this is the ruins of the ancient city of Chichen Itza, which is now one of the new 7 wonders of the world. But despite this thriving and lucrative tourism sector, southeastern Mexico isn't exactly the easiest place to get around in, which has created a very unique and interesting problem. Take Cancun, for example, which has a very high concentration of tourists, but is relatively isolated from the rest of the peninsula inland. Most visitors arrive in the city through Cancun International Airport, the country's second busiest airport. Tourists come here for the hotels and beaches, but exploring the region further inland is quite time-consuming, and the infrastructure is pretty lacking. For example, the shortest possible route from Cancun to Chichen Itza takes as much as 3 hours by bus, and that's assuming that there isn't much traffic. That's just the time it takes to get there, too. There's going to be another 3 long hours sitting on a bus on the way back. Other archaeological sites are even more remote, to the point that they're rarely visited, if they are at all. The Tren Maya aims to solve this very problem by connecting many of these tourist hotspots like Cancun, Tulum, Mérida, Playa del Carmen, and of course Chichen Itza with each other. The entire route will be divided into 7 different segments. Segment 1, which is the only section that isn't part of the main loop, goes from the city of Palenque towards Escárcega and serves as a gateway for the entire system, connecting it to the rest of the country. The 6 remaining segments make up the loop around the peninsula itself, with segments 2, 3, and 4 connecting Escárcega all the way to the city of Cancun by the Caribbean coast. This part of the network goes through some notable destinations, such as the aforementioned famous Chichen Itza and the capital city of the state of Yucatán, Mérida. Finally, segments 5, 6, and 7 complete the loop down to the south, connecting Cancun back to Escárcega while passing through tourist hotspots such as Playa del Carmen and Tulum, as well as the city of Chetumal, near the border with Belize. Tren Maya will have a total of 20 stations and 14 stops, and it's expected to carry as many as 22 to 37,000 passengers every day. Now, remember that figure because it's going to be crucial later in this video. Aside from serving tourists, the network will also be used for local passenger traffic between cities and towns, as well as freight shipments along the route. Around 40% or 700 kilometers of the entire network will be fully electrified. This includes a section of the route that goes between Mérida and Chetumal via Cancun. The remaining 60% will be hybrid powered, running on both diesel and electricity. Construction on the Tren Maya began back in June 2020 under the administration of then Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador. Part of the project will make use of the existing right-of-way, meaning that in some areas the route will have land that's either already been cleared or with tracks already laid on the ground. Initially, the project was being built by various Mexican and Chinese construction companies, but interestingly, as of September 2023, both the construction and operation of the Tren Maya has now been fully transferred to the Secretariat of National Defense and the military. Now, this has been a recurring pattern all through the president's administration. Many different infrastructure projects are now being carried out by the military. So, according to Obrador, this is being done as a means to guarantee good administration. But there might be another reason. More on that a little later. When the Tren Maya was first announced back in 2018, the initial cost estimate for the entire project was somewhere around $7.4 billion, and would be primarily funded by the government through its National Tourism Fund. But according to the most recent figures, that amount has now risen to as much as $30 billion. Despite multiple delays because of the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as a court ruling that temporarily halted all construction, the first segment of the Tren Maya that runs from Campeche to Cancun opened to the public back in December 2023. Just 3.5 years after construction began, which is honestly pretty impressive. But it doesn't end there. Just 2 weeks after this, the rest of the route from Cancun to Palenque also began operations, extending the operational segments of the system by more than 300 kilometers further south. 2 months later, another vital segment of the network opened to the public. This one runs from Cancun to Playa del Carmen, passing through some of the areas around the Riviera Maya. Back in September 2024, this coastal part of the project was further extended south, up to the city of Felipe Carrillo Puerto. Just 9 days after the previous extension, the station located in the city of Chetumal was inaugurated by López Obrador just a few days before he left office and the new president assumed his position. But this new station doesn't yet connect to the rest of the system, as part of Segment 6 between Felipe Carrillo Puerto and Bacalar, as well as the entirety of Segment 7, is still under construction. As of September 2024, this station in Chetumal is primarily used only for travel to Bacalar and vice versa. Now, some estimates place the full completion of the whole project sometime in the middle of 2025, with remaining unfinished segments currently about 70% of the way done. Aside from the already mentioned segments of the Tren Maya, the newly elected president of Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum Pardo, vows to further extend the project and better connect it with the rest of Mexico's national train system. This comes as no surprise, as Sheinbaum is known to be a close political ally of the former president. She's even considered his protege. She won nearly 60% of the vote and was sworn in as Mexico's first female president. While this is a significant milestone, she faces numerous challenges as the country faces pressing problems. This overview from our sponsor Ground News is based on over 250 articles covering this topic, and each of them reports slightly differently. For instance, the Associated Press News highlights her historic achievement as the first female president of Mexico, along with her goals and the challenges ahead. Meanwhile, Clarin focuses on the impact of her election and places her within the political spectrum. You can see how just reading one of these articles might not give you a comprehensive viewpoint. Every story on Ground News comes with quick visual breakdowns and tags for political bias, factuality, and even ownership of the sources, backed by ratings from independent news monitoring organizations. Their new feature lets you filter for very high factuality, making it easy to find news sources that are highly reliable and focused on accurate reporting. Each outlet is evaluated based on factors like their use of credible sources, how quickly they issue corrections, and whether their reporting provides meaningful context. So this way, you can read sources that consistently deliver well-researched, accurate information with minimal bias or sensationalism. Head to ground.news/mega or scan our QR code for a massive 50% off their top-tier Vantage plan. It's their biggest sale of the year and only available for a limited time. Their platform actually helps a lot with our research, and they'll help you too by keeping you informed. By subscribing, you also help to support our videos, so thanks a lot. And now, let's take a look at the Tren Maya and which extensions Claudia Sheinbaum is talking about. One such addition that she's committed to building is a 50-kilometer extension from the city of Mérida up north to the port city of Progreso. Aside from this, she's also looking at the possibility of creating a new alignment that would connect the state of Veracruz and the Trans-Isthmus Railway to the city of Palenque and the rest of the Tren Maya network. So one of the main reasons why the Tren Maya was even built in the first place was to redistribute the high concentration of tourists by the Caribbean coast to the rest of the Yucatán Peninsula inland. But that's far from being the only potential benefit of this megaproject. Aside from tourists now being able to easily explore even more of Mexico, the Tren Maya also doubles as a passenger rail service that can be used by locals to travel between different cities within the region for work or personal reasons. We've also mentioned that the network will be used for freight transport as well, making this single project solve many of the region's logistical problems all at once. This increased movement between cities within the Yucatán Peninsula also encourages development and plenty of economic opportunities to the local population of these areas, a region of the country that's largely been neglected by the government. In fact, when it comes to employment, just the construction of the trains for the project alone has already created more than 10,000 jobs for the local population. A United Nations analysis has even estimated that by 2030, the entire megaproject will have generated a whopping 945,000 new jobs, potentially lifting hundreds of thousands of locals out of poverty. But despite its many potential benefits, this project also has its environmental and social costs. For one, the Tren Maya is being built in one of the most densely forested regions in the entire continent. It should be no surprise that millions upon millions of trees are being cut down to make way for its construction. Now, Mexico's already admitted that as many as 3.4 million trees have already been cut down as a result of the construction work. That's assuming that their figures are as accurate as they present them to be. Other estimates put the figure somewhere between 6 and 10 million trees that have already been felled, and the project's not even fully done yet. Mexico says that they do plan to replant all of the forest that's been destroyed because of the construction, but the trees on the surface aren't the only things in danger of being destroyed by this project. Just below the surface of the Yucatán Peninsula lies a series of underground rock formations known locally as cenotes. These have historically been, and still remain, an important source of fresh water for the local population. But with the recent construction work that's being done, these cenotes are now at risk of being contaminated or just outright completely destroyed.
Well, Yucatán has a very peculiar geography. It's a water system that's very delicate.
And by transferring the project and framing it as a project of national security, the Mexican government can bypass certain legal and regulatory hurdles, including environmental and community-based challenges. Now, yet another issue that many people have with this project is that it could potentially lead to the destruction of newly unearthed ancient ruins and artifacts from the Mayan civilization. The figures vary from source to source, with some estimates placing the number of these discoveries from anywhere as low as 1,000 to as many as 25,000. The construction of this project could destroy, damage, or completely bury some of these sites forever. And although several of these ruins are and can be protected by Mexican law, not all of them will be, especially given how fast-tracked this entire project seems to be going. But what do you think about that? Should these ancient ruins come in the way of a modern project that could potentially benefit us today? We're kind of torn. Let us know your thoughts. So, looking at the railway today, most of its segments are already open to the public. But how's it doing so far? Well, when the project was first conceived, if you'll remember, it was estimated that the whole system would see as many as 22 to 37,000 passengers every day. But as of their most recent figures, that number is only about 1,200. But it's still worth noting that the Tren Maya isn't fully built, and they still haven't started operating at full capacity just yet. So knowing this, the network's ridership could still increase over time, but we kind of think it's a long way to go, and it doesn't really seem that realistic today. But honestly, who knows? Maybe they can pull it off. And they kind of have to in order to be able to pay for the cost of the construction here. One possible way to do this is to increase ridership of local residents by adjusting the marketing more into this direction. After all, the train doesn't just go through tourist destinations and archaeological sites. It could probably also work pretty well as a dedicated passenger or commuter line. But the pricing would then need to be more affordable to make this happen. The train line's ridership numbers could also benefit by making the ticket pricing competitive when compared to local buses. As of the most recent figures, a bus ride from Cancun to Chichen Itza costs roughly $13 and takes about 3.5 hours. While on the other hand, the same train ride costs about $30 but takes only 2.5 hours. Now, that time difference doesn't seem like it's much, but riding a train is definitely more efficient overall, and it's not susceptible to traffic jams the same way buses are, so you're probably going to be saving a lot more time than just that 1 hour. Okay, so as it stands today, with the numbers and figures that we currently have available, the Tren Maya seems like a pretty divisive megaproject. And that is why we want to know your opinion. What do you think about the Tren Maya? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. If you want to see more about another proposed megaproject in Mexico, you should watch our video about Mexico's Panama Canal rival. As always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.